Hello everyone, and welcome back to History Discussion, where we dive deep into the untold stories of war. In this episode, we're tackling a topic that left even the CIA in awe, a covert operation so well hidden that it took decades for the truth to come out. Today, we'll talk about how, during the long years of the Vietnam War, the movement of money and supplies across Cambodia became absolutely vital for North Vietnam's survival, and how the Americans and our intelligence agencies scrambled to keep up. During the anti-American resistance years, the Cambodian riel was a critical currency for purchasing weapons, food, and supplies to keep the North Vietnamese army in the fight. At first, under King Sihanouk, things went pretty smoothly for Vietnamese logistics operations. But in 1970, after Lon Nol's coup, everything changed. Suddenly, Lon Nol's new regime issued a brand new currency to wipe out all of the old money North Vietnam was holding. To make it even harder, they gave almost no notice about the currency exchange. Tran Tri Nung, the Vietnamese official in charge of finance there, knew exactly what this meant, but by the time he found out, his base was already surrounded. Here's where it gets interesting. While Tran Tri Nung was trapped, his wife, a Cambodian citizen, could still move around freely. The Lon Nol regime didn't suspect her. Thanks to this stroke of luck, she was able to secretly warn Vietnamese forces, who then rushed to move all the old money back into Cambodia for exchange. The operation was pulled off just in time, and they managed to trade in all the cash before it became worthless. But now, they faced a different nightmare. It's bad enough to have no money, but carrying huge amounts of cash during a crackdown was even worse. If they got caught with it, it meant certain death. Hiding the money in Vietnam wasn't safe either, since American and South Vietnamese forces were on high alert and patrolling everywhere. Yet the war effort needed that cash for guns, bullets, food, basic survival. At this point, the Central Office for South Vietnam, COSVN, issued a direct order. By any means necessary, the money had to get back to Vietnam. The men in charge, Mr. Moi Quai, Mr. Newman Chow, and Mr. Tu Khan, came up with an ingenious solution. Their plan? Hide the cash in huge vats, then cover everything with layers of mam bo hoc, a famously pungent fermented fish sauce that's a staple in Khmer cuisine. If you've ever smelled mam bo hoc, you know why this worked. The stench is so overwhelming that anyone unfamiliar would refuse to go anywhere near it. The North Vietnamese believed Lon Nol's soldiers would be so repulsed by the smell, they'd never check the vats. And that's exactly what happened. When they hit the checkpoints, the guards couldn't handle the odor and let the shipments pass without thorough inspection. But they had a backup plan in case things went wrong. If the convoys got stopped and searched, 140 armed soldiers were hidden nearby, ready to fight their way through if needed. Luckily, that drastic option never had to be used. Thanks to the stink, the shipments got through. The story didn't end there. The war kept shifting, and North Vietnamese bases in Cambodia started getting exposed and destroyed. But the need for funds was more urgent than ever, and most of the key people running the money lines were either killed or captured. Except for one, Mr. Newman Chow. His mission was clear. He had to get back to Saigon and rebuild the entire money transfer network. But there was just one problem. How could he legally enter South Vietnam without being caught? In those days, you couldn't just cross the border. You needed official paperwork, and without it, you were a sitting duck for arrest. So how did Mr. Nu Min Chow pull it off? The answer lies in one of the most daring identity switches of the war, and we'll get to that next. Here's how Mr. Nu Min Chow took on his nearly impossible mission. With his cover blown in Cambodia and the South Vietnamese police on high alert, he had to find a way to legally re-enter Saigon without tipping off the authorities. The solution? He decided to impersonate a Viet Q, a Vietnamese expatriate returning from Cambodia to search for his lost family. The plan started with a visit to a local family of Vietnamese descent living near the Cambodia-Vietnam border. He convinced them to help, asking for a ride by boat to their relative's house in southern Vietnam. Once there, he had the relatives take him to the local hamlet chief so he could explain his situation. He was a Viet Q, separated from his wife and children by the turmoil of war, and just trying to reunite with his family. But things didn't go as smoothly as hoped. The Hamlet chief was suspicious and cold. He demanded detailed proof. Where was Chow's hometown? What did he do for a living in Cambodia? Where was his family? Did he have documentation? Fortunately, Mr. Nu Min Chow was well prepared. He had photos with his wife and children, plus business licenses from an import-export company in Phnom Penh. Everything he said matched up logically. Even so, the Hamlet chief refused to trust him. Instead, he handed Chow over to the police for a thorough investigation. This was the most dangerous part of the journey. He now faced interrogation by the sharpest minds in the South Vietnamese police force, all experts at rooting out spies and infiltrators. For more than a month, Chow was grilled, in Vietnamese, Cambodian, and even French and English. But he never slipped. His story stayed consistent, and his fluency in foreign languages only convinced them further. After 4 weeks of intense questioning, the police found no contradictions in his statements. Finally, they had no choice but to grant him legal identity papers so he could live and work in Saigon. Mr. Nu Min Chow had pulled off one of the most daring identity switches of the entire war. In fact, his deception was so convincing that even after giving him official citizenship, the Hamlet chief approached him again, saying, "There's no way you could be a communist agent. You're a real businessman, not a government operative. And besides, you speak so many foreign languages." Thanks to this brilliant piece of espionage, the money supply route into South Vietnam survived and even thrived. Remarkably, this operation was so secret that even decades after the war, few people, on either side, knew it existed. The CIA, with all its resources, admitted that while they'd managed to uncover some details about the legendary Ho Chi Minh Trail by land and by sea, they never discovered this secret financial pipeline. They knew cash was being moved, but couldn't figure out how it was done. That's why, to this day, American intelligence experts admit that even their best minds never figured out the details of North Vietnam's financial supply lines. The Vietnamese kept the secret so well that even their own people didn't talk about it until many years later. It wasn't until April 28, 2009 that the Vietnamese government officially recognized the heroes behind this operation. On that day, the President of Vietnam awarded the title Hero of the People's Armed Forces to 3 special finance teams in the Central Office for South Vietnam and the State Bank of Vietnam for their exceptional achievements during the anti-American war. And that's where we'll leave today's story, a story of ingenuity, courage, and a secret that confounded even the world's top intelligence agencies. But let's ask the question every history buff is wondering: how did North Vietnam manage to outsmart so many advanced American surveillance and intelligence technologies, not just once, but over and over again? What lessons does this hold for military strategy today? Be sure to subscribe and hit the bell on the History Discussion channel so you never miss an episode. And stay tuned for the next deep dive into the war stories that changed the world.